I'll send you something.
Okay, Father, you're live. Well, I need to check to make sure that the audio is working before we continue.
So,
But yeah. Okay, I think we're so.
we're all something to eat. Everybody getting something to eat here? You got good food?
Okay, I'm going to see if we are inside our
Want to eat? That way you don't have to wear your mask, all right?
Okay, you're muted.
We're like brothers. Here.
I'm sophomore. Especially the first time. I'm in business.
Where are you sitting?
Okay, you start whenever you want. Yeah, you're live.
Okay, we're live on Facebook Live. Welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about one of the greatest books ever written, Love and Responsibility.
Who hasn't gotten
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Bless us, O Lord. And these are gifts which we are about to receive from thy mouth in Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. One of the greatest books ever written, Love and Responsibility. Everybody loves talking about theology of the body. The trouble is, very few people understand it. And I read it a long time ago. Barely understood it. I read other people's commentary on it. It seems to me that they didn't understand it, they didn't read it. I mean, it's a good book to read, I don't want to say anything. Maybe I'm sure that he's part of it. But then I read Love and Responsibility, which I must confess at first read is not that easy to comprehend. But as you read it, it makes more and more sense. I've probably read it about 5 times. But when you read Love and Responsibility, what you want to do is don't get bogged down on things you don't understand. Just read it straight through, and then go back and reread it. And the second time that you read it, it'll make more sense because you'll have that context of the other things that you read. The Holy Father tends to write in circles. He likes to circle around a problem. And so he kind of a phenomenological approach to look at a problem, to look at situations from different perspectives. And so that's why we want to read this book a couple times. So yesterday last week we talked about the verb to use, and that he was going to work, I think it was Kant's principle that another human being can never be used as an object to an end, right? So right now, those of you who are eating macaroni and cheese, you're using a spoon. You're just using a spoon to put food into your mouth, okay? You never use a person like that. A person always has to be used. A person can be used, but they must be used in an end in themselves. A person is always be treated as an end in themselves. So, how does this look like? So, let's say that Max over here has a crush on Julie. And Julie just happens to be Sam's sister. And so Max calls up Sam and says, Sam, can I come over to your house? I really want to play cards. And Sam says, sure, why not? Well, what is Max doing? He is using Sam as a means to an end. He doesn't really care about playing cards with Sam. What does he really care about? He cares about meeting his sister Julie, right? And so you can't do that. So and that's called what we would normally call being manipulative, right? Using somebody to meet someone. So if Max wants to meet Sam's sister Julia, what is the next one? He calls Sam up and says, Sam, I've been having a secret crush on your sister for the last 18 years. And I just really like to talk to her. But I can't put her in the moons to meet your sister. And then Sam would say, heck no, stay away from my sister. Or he could say, no, that's great, yeah, come on over. All right. And so, what happens then is that Sam and Max, what the two of them do is they recognize a good that they can both agree to, and then they both agree to the means that they're going to employ in order to achieve that good. Okay? And that's how you never use a person as a means to an end. You can think of the same thing with trying to find the perfect marker here that actually works out. You can say the same thing with a doctor and a patient, right? So if you have a doctor, throw that one away. A doctor and a patient, okay? And so does the doctor use the patient for money? And does the patient use the doctor for help? Okay, well, that's a good one. So we would say no, because they're agreeing for a common good, which would be, good health. So they're both moving towards good health. So they're not using each other. Now, what if the patient said, look, what I want you to do, Doc, is I just really think it'd be cool, I'd be the envy of all my friends if you put my left on the foot of my right foot. Especially if I came right out of my home. That would look really cool. That's what I want. They would, because it has an evil end, okay, they would now be using each other. They're not doing something. The doctor is using the patient as a means to an end. He's getting money. And the patient is being put onto his finger. All right. So now, we've got these two people. Switch side here. So we've got these two people. We've got Jack, right here. Here's Jack. There's Jack. Then we got Susie. No relation to Susie that we really know. There's Susie, looking beautiful and gorgeous and curvy. There's Jack and Susie, all right? And so they look at each other, and Susie sees something in Jack that she desires. What does she desire? Jack's massive masculinity that he possesses, right? Susie desires it. And Jack desires Susie's femininity. And because it's the desire that they both have, you really see how there's great opportunity here for these two people to use each other as a means to an end. Just use that person to obtain the sensuality and the gratification that I desire. Right? So that's what we don't want to do. The person can never be used as an object or as a means to an end. So in order for that to happen, as the two of them look at each other, and fall deeply in love. This love has to be centered on something good, right? In order to be love. Otherwise, it's just going to be used, right? Because you don't want Susie turning Jack into just like a walking chocolate bar. It's just there to gratify her feeling of the threat, right? And so now we're going to talk about what John Paul expresses as the analysis of love. Now, love has many meanings, but John Paul II said it's always about a mutual relationship between two persons. You cannot take human love and reduce it to biological or physiological factors, because love is a virtue. And love as a virtue has to be greater than our biology. If love wasn't greater than biology, then two hamsters could love each other. Two hamsters love each other. Maybe in some people's universe, hamsters actually love each other, but we would say no, because love is an actual virtue. Right? All right. So we're going to look at the different meanings of love. We're going to look at the different meanings of love. So, first is love as attraction. Love as attraction. While liking is closely connected with knowledge, you know, the more you know something, the more you tend to like it. It's a good thing. Attraction is more of an immediate emotion, right? You see something and all of a sudden you have this emotional reaction to it, you're attracted to it. Man's emotions in general, says John Paul II, are not oriented towards intellectual knowledge, but towards experience in a broad sense. We want to experience whatever it is that we're attracted to. So, have you all been attracted to somebody? You've been attracted to somebody range? Happens all the time, right? It happens sometimes very immediately. There's no rhyme or reason to people that we find attractive. So, you know, again, there's Jack. He's nice and handsome. He's in his Bible lab. It's kind of boring. And all of a sudden he sees Susie again. But it's more Susie than ever. He sees her. He's attracted to her. He's attracted to her kind of mental totality. Why do some people attract us and others? There's congenital factors, right? There's just something about the way we're put together that makes us attracted to other people. We tend to be attracted to people that look similar to us. That's just universally. It's kind of interesting that very attractive people tend to be attracted to very attractive people. Have you ever noticed that? You would think that people who are, I hate to say this, I'll put my, most of us are mediocre, well, pretty attractive, right? Who are attractive or kind of mediocre in our attractiveness. Mediocre, you'd think mediocre attractive people are going to be attracted to very attractive people, but they're not. They're attracted to other people who are more mediocrely attractive. And so there's a certain congenital thing that's going on that's who we find attractive. Okay? Acquired characteristics that have something like, if you realize, this happens all the time in the Catholic world, you really get into Jesus, so you pray the rosary all the time, and suddenly the girl sees a boy pray the rosary, she's like so attracted. You look so spiritual all the time because you pray the rosary. Social conditioning has a large factor in this. We're socially conditioned to like certain types of people rather than others. Experiences have a large part to do with it. The experience of your family, you tend to be attracted to people that you've experienced in your life before. I know that once I saw a family where this one man hung around with his older sister, and he was kind of meek and humble, and she was very aggressive and domineering, which, I mean, not off the scale or anything, but kind of thing. So he married an older, both of them very strongly domineering, and she married a younger man, actually kind of being humble, because that's who they were used to being around, right? You should not be surprised that the man or the woman you're attracted to has characteristics similar to your parents, because that's. And so we see this attractiveness as emotional attractiveness. Is something out of our control, all right? So attraction, said John Paul II, is of the essence of love, right? Without this attraction, we would not, we don't think of love without attraction. And John Paul II says, in some sense, it is indeed love, although you cannot reduce love to attraction. It cannot be simply reduced to attraction. But it's essential, right? It's essential, right? And so, whenever you're trying to set somebody up on a blind date, what's the first question? What does he look like? Or what does she look like? She's really nice. No. I'm not going, right? So we're all different. A man who has high spiritual values will obviously react to a little differently than a man who has mere sensual values. And so who you are as a person determines who you're attracted to. And so that's why you want to develop your own emotional maturity, your own spiritual maturity, your own moral virtue. Because the more moral virtue you develop, the more you'll be naturally attracted to other people with moral virtue. And so, there you go. Now the trouble with your emotions, what we're talking about here is your emotions, right? So Jack is attracted to Susie because of the emotional value that he puts in Susie. And just on a side note here, all of our relationships have some emotional value, right? Catherine over there has some good girlfriends. She doesn't have any girlfriends, but she doesn't have some emotional attraction, right? It's weird. That's different. Sometimes people think this is a little weird on emotional attraction when it seems that way. It's not weird at all. Without that emotional attractiveness, you don't really talk about a relationship, right? However, where the emotions are functioning naturally, they are not concerned with the truth of the object. In other words, it may or may not be a true good. And so this is the difficulty that we have that you might have experienced in your own life. You have a strong emotional attraction to somebody, and it's just an emotional attraction. It's not really concerned with the truth of the person. And this happens all the time. You fall in love with somebody, then you get this intense emotional relationship going, then you spend the next 8 months carrying them all apart, finding out that they're not exactly what you thought they were. Because we all have this image of this person we want to be in a relationship with, and we kind of just see somebody and just attach it to that person. That's why I like to say a man is more ready to propose to a woman after 3 months of going out with her than after 9. Because 3 months when we get that peak, because that's when we see who she's like. The difficulty with emotional love is that if it's not based on truth, if you don't really see the truth of the other, you can easily turn to hatred. The problem arises, as John Paul II, when the subject does not analyze the truth of the object's values, but rather the truth of his emotions, the genuineness of his feelings. So you find people like that who base their love for the person based on the genuineness of their feelings. I might feel it's really, what's that one song, how do you know if people love you? It's just, how's that song called? It's an old song from the 70s. All right. Now, we're not going to downplay emotions. They're important, but they are not the totality of life. They're just an important part of it. Okay? All right. So now, we're going to talk about love as desire. Love as desire is based on the fact that man needs other beings. We can't live in isolation. Sex, our sexuality in a sense is an imbalance. When we desire the other, we desire a good that we lack. Alright? So, what does Jack lack? He lacks nice curves. Okay. Alright? What does Jill lack? She lacks a strong physique. She's going after that strong physique. I will say, this is just Father Eric, it's not so much of a responsibility. My analysis of the situation is that your main desire in life is to profit. Your main desire is to have children. Whether you want to have children or not, that's what this desire is coming from. I desire to have a baby. Can a man have a baby, say?
By himself, no.
No. Very difficult, right? And so, when a man is looking for what he desires is another person that he can have a baby with, right? Which is why men are oriented towards health. For youth and health, all right? So if you want to attract men that you look like they're capable of bearing children, so look healthy. It's really, that's why sometimes when we get into this, your figure is important as a woman, but it doesn't matter what your figure is, as long as it's healthy, as long as your figure is in good shape, right? Wherever your figure should be, is in good shape and you'll be fine. So there's all sorts of body shapes out there, and then like them all to a certain extent, right? Just with health. That's why women, they care so much about the body shape, a little bit, especially in today's culture. But more, what are they looking for? As desire in order to fulfill something like that. They're looking for somebody to take care of them while they're pregnant and nursing. So they're looking for stability and strength and somebody that can really provide. I can prove that to you with this little experiment. Okay? You guys have heard me say this before, right? So, Catherine is in a party, and she meets two guys, and one is 2 inches taller than her, with dark hair and blue eyes, with a steel-cut chin, and it's just the life of the party. And he's a great actor, and likes all the same musicals that Catherine, right? Alright? And then there's another guy that's his fur tight. He's okay, but his eyes aren't quite as cute. He's packing maybe an extra 10 pounds. You can tell a joke, but he's not really as interesting as the other guy. Right? They both asked Catherine out on Friday night. Which one is Catherine going to choose? First guy, right? Right? But now she finds out that the second guy has his own house and a job where he makes $150,000 a year. And the first guy has dropped out of high school and is living in his mom's basement trying to get full. So which guy are you going to go with?
Second one.
Yeah, absolutely. The second one, right? So for guys, that's not that important. You dropped out of high school, cool. You're cute. That's all I really care about. All right. So that's what you desire. You desire to have this complementarity of the sexes, right? Now this desire, said John Paul II, can't be reduced to simple desire as in I desire a glass of water. Otherwise, it would just be, because we're going to see this love as desire is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But if you're just reducing somebody to a glass of water, and I just desire a glass of water right now, and you are my glass of water, give me a drink. Right? You reduce that person. So what this desire is, as you experience this, is with Jack. This is the struggle that we're undergoing. When Jack sees Susie and he has this desire for her, you realize that Susie's a good person. So the sexual attributes that Susie possesses, you can't really love somebody's sexual attributes, right? You can't love somebody's hair. In a sense, you can love it as you love chocolate, but you can't love it as an object called that love. You can only love the person. So what you're doing is loving the person who has these attributes. And so this desire that Jack has is actually a desire for the whole person. It's not just a desire for the attributes. So we got love's attraction. You're just attracted to it, I don't know why. They just have this attraction. And there's love and desire because you as a person possess something that I want out of love. Right. So the next thing we have is love as goodwill. So in loving another person, you find the greatest possible fullness of your being. You're created to love. And you're created to love something that is capable of receiving your love. Can you love a hamster? Not really. You can't love a hamster because a hamster can't receive your love in the same way. In a certain sense, you can't smell the color yellow. Can you smell the color yellow? No, you can't. You can see the color. So you can't really love a hamster. You can only love another person. So love is goodwill is that we desire that person's good. And in order to love this other person's good, that love of goodwill must be free of self-interest. We cannot want a person's good just so that person would be a greater good for oneself. All right? So let's say Jack meets Susie, right? And Susie is the cutest girl he's ever seen. Boy, she's cute. She got big eyes, she got dimple, cutest little button nose you've ever seen. Totally love her hair, especially the words that she puts in it. Okay. She's very spiritual and loves that. She loves spiritual women. She's got a great voice and loves singers. She talks just like his mother. Really sweet. Yeah, and so he loves it. So he desires his attraction. He's attracted to her. He's got desire for her. And he's got goodwill for her. And he says, Susie, you weigh 500 pounds. Look at you, Susie. You're like a water balloon. I think, it'd be really good for you. Really good for you. It'd be good for me too. We'll both join the Princeton Club, and we will lose weight. We'll get in shape. Okay? And it might look like, Jack is totally after Susie's good. But what is Jack really after? He just wants to have a fit Susie. So that he can possess and fit Susie, right? And so he's not really after her good for her sake. He's after her good so that she will be a better good for him. Okay? And so we have to be careful about that because it happens all the time. We tell ourselves that I want you to be better at this, but you're not really thinking of that person, you're really thinking about yourself. So in order to really have love as goodwill, you have to will that good for that person, right? So if This is the authentic, this is the closest that you come to authentic love. Love must tend towards this goodwill, or it will destroy. It doesn't have to totally exist at this, at the time you get married. But it has to be oriented in that direction, or your marriage will fall apart. Okay, or it'll just cease to have real love in it. You must. So when you start a marriage, let's get this here. So when you get married, here's Susie again. Looking here at Susie. Like. So there's Susie. All right. So when Jack marries Susie, he puts that ring on her finger. There it is. Puts that ring on her finger. And we put goodwill here. And he marries her. He's very much attracted to her, right? Let's say it's the most attractive woman he's ever met. He's attracted to her 100%. To put numbers out. He really desired her. He's got a strong desire for femininity. And the guy's just oozing testosterone. And how much goodwill do you think he has for when he gets married? I would say he's lucky if he's at 30% when he gets married. All right? Because it's really hard to have authentic goodwill for another person. It grows over time. And we'll get into this later, but what you want to see when you marry somebody is that your goodwill is towards her is growing. That your goodwill towards this person is growing. And what you want to do before you marry somebody, you want to ensure that their goodwill for you is growing. That they have the capacity and ability to will your good for your sake. Okay? And that is growing within the relationship. You don't see, but it's unrealistic to think that you're just, when you get married, who's going to love your spouse more than you? Jesus, one, right? But who else? Their mom and their dad, right? Right? I can guarantee you, Jesse, when you get married, your parents are going to love you a lot more than that boy that you're getting married, right? But who has more desire for you, and who is more attracted to you than your parents? This boy that you're getting married to, right? All right, so love needs to be oriented towards the good of the other. Which is why, on a side note, I love it when people don't have exclusive relationships. Because if you really loved another person's good, right, you would want them, if they found somebody more better for you, to discover that person and marry that person, right? If you really had goodwill towards them, if Jack really had goodwill towards Susie, he'd say, Susie, I don't want to restrict you. I don't want to limit your freedom. I don't want you to just think about only me. I want you to find the best person for you to marry, because I desire your good. And, it'll make me sad, because, quite honestly, I'm the best thing you're going to find. But if you think it's somebody else, okay. Right? Okay, so that's the goodwill you want for that problem. All right. So I got some more I want to do today, but right now, any questions on any of this? So it's all made sense so far. No questions? Susan, you look real. No. Great. So we got love as attraction, love as desire, and love as goodwill. All right. Now we're going to talk about one of the main problems in love, and that is reciprocity. Reciprocity. Okay. There's more to love, says John Paul II, than what lies in the man and in the woman. So that would be two loves. But love is something common to them to meet, an objective whole. The movement from two eyes loving each other to a single being. Love is not unilateral, the love we're talking about. It exists between the two persons. So it can't be simply bilateral. True love not only desires the other's good, but that the other desires your good. This reciprocity is not selfish, but the very nature of love. The bringing together of desire and good will. So this is what I was just talking about before, it's reciprocity. There's nothing better in life than to throw yourself into the arms of a man, throw yourself into the arms of a woman, knowing that they desire your good above all else. Okay. And that they're willing to sacrifice themselves for their good. That's what makes marriage right there. Boom. That's marriage. And when you get married then, is what you're saying is, I desire your good more than anybody else's good in the world. I desire your good, which is, in a certain sense, why it's good that I'm not married. Because in a certain sense, because of my job as a priest, or my vocation as a priest, I desire the good, the primary good, whoever I'm with, right? So if I'm desiring acts of good, and my sister calls me and says, I need you, I'm sorry, I don't know. But if I was desiring acts of good and helping them off, and my wife called me and said, I need you, I buy max. Because I have an obligation, and I have an obligation to this person who's good at doing this. All right. So that's reciprocity. Now, when you're dating somebody, just on a side note, this is me, dating, but it's not John Paul II. That is why when you date somebody and you let your emotions go crazy, and you see this person doing good for you all the time, and you think this person must love you for what they're doing for you, it's very difficult to discern whether or not they're doing that good for you as a person, or whether they're doing that good because they desire you to be good for themselves. Right? Very difficult. It's amazing how many things women stop doing for guys and guys stop doing for women after they get married. So, what is the best indicator of that person's ability to authentically love you? How do they love their friend? How do they love their mother? How do they love their brothers and sisters? Because that's an indication of their capacity of, authentic love, right? Not how they're making you feel. All right. So now we're going to move from how we develop this love. Okay? How do we develop this love between? Yeah, there's all sorts of little things that you can do. I don't know. When you're dating somebody and they get really mad at you because you don't do what they want you to do. You ever had that happen to you? We probably have done. All right. So, John Paul II talks now about sympathy. And he says, what we're really looking for here in a relationship is we're looking for a sincere friendship. Sympathy comes from the Greek word to experience together. Similar emotional experience experiencing united people. Love at a purely emotional stage, where the will has played no active part. The will at most merely consents to experience. So you have an emotional experience together. At the beginning, I value only the emotion. The person arouses my sympathy. Sympathy is what makes people feel close together. Simply to value a person's worth is not enough. When sympathy breaks down, so does love. So sympathy is this emotional experience that we have when we're next to the person or with the person. Okay, that's sympathy. And you need this in order to love. You need this sympathetic experience. Friendship begins with sympathy. So it gives friendship warmth. Okay, without this emotional feeling when you're next to the person, it's hard to have a friend. It isn't not love, but it is one element. It must move friendship. Because the reason sympathy isn't love is because it's not in the will. It simply resides in the emotions. Okay. It's the emotion having the same emotional experience together. People, you ever been in a, have you ever had a badger game? And it's a real intense badger game. And you're next to this person, and you don't really know them that well. But you're next to them, and all of a sudden they score the touchdown and beat Ohio State to go to the Rose Bowl. What do you do that person you don't really know that well? Yeah, hug them, right? But you've been in this emotional experience together, and you feel like it's bonding together, and suddenly, woo, like, wow. That's why it can happen sometimes on a real emotional retreat. You're different people together, that is why you got to be careful with sexual experience, because what causes more emotion than the sexual experience, right? So that sexual experience is meant by God to develop sympathy between a man and a woman, right? But it's just an emotional experience. It doesn't mean that you actually have love. It doesn't mean you love that person. It doesn't reside in the will. It's just a sympathetic response that resides in the feeling. Friendship, as we said, is two people who will each other's good. Sympathy is not friendship, but friendship springs from sympathy. It gives it warmth. So in order for love to exist, sympathy must be transformed into friendship. And friendship will be supplemented by sympathy. Emotions by themselves cannot commit the will. Many marriages base too much on sympathy fail. And relationships based on sympathy are weak. Okay. So that's why you got to be very careful with relationships where the main thing that you do is be in each other's presence. And you just have the warmth of each other's presence. Because you're not really acting the will toward friendship. You're just experiencing that sympathetic bond. Love cannot remain on the level of sympathy, nor does the loss of sympathy mean the end of love. You can lose sympathy for somebody you still love very deeply. That usually exists in families and relationships. That's why it's one of the worst days in the world, I think. Well, not one of the worst. Days that I think are terrible. Worst day, come over and hang out and watch television. And you sit on the couch together, right? Very, very bad day. Let's study together. What? Study? What do you learn about the person? Study together. Unless the other person's really good at calculus, you can help with calc, right? And then you might learn that person's related to your health and education with your stupidity, you know. Maybe you could do that with a boyfriend, just ask him how he said something, just keep forgetting what he told you and see how patient he is. So, another thing, very, very bad day. Let's just go to Mass together. What are you doing going to Mass together? I mean, what is that like about the person that didn't like that? Or praying the rosary with each other. You know, I mean, these things sound really cool, right? Let's pray the rosary together. But it doesn't, you're not learning those persons. It's not developing a real friendship. It's just developing a sympathetic response you have. Now, sympathy is not a bad thing. You need it in order to have love for them. Well, you don't absolutely need it, but it helps, right? Sympathy should exist. But normally you develop enough sympathy doing the things that you would normally do together. You know, like, having a cup of coffee and talking with others, going rock climbing together with others, right? Going to the farmer's market with others, being with that person with others. It's just a focus on it. Strong sympathy, says John Paul II, often based on sensual attraction, obscures the need to create friendship. And as John Paul II says, it's against the rules to let that happen. So as soon as you develop a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex that you think you might marry, the goal is to move the sympathetic response into friendship as, I wouldn't want to say as quickly as possible, but as expediently as possible. And not allowing, sympathy, to block this growth in friendship. Does that all make sense? No debate on that. Anybody here don't raise your hand? Have you ever been in a relationship that's been based on sympathy? And, not a lot of friendship on it. Extremely easy. But this is where kind of all things said. This is where the work is. That takes work. All right. So John Paul also talked about this great word, comradeship. The sharing of joint work, common goals, shared concerns. It is not sympathy or friendship. They have a comrade, but it's a good indication that it can exist. So in other words, Noah is looking for a wife. He's just decided, I want to be married in 8 months. That's something Noah would say to himself. Absolutely, we can pull it off. So Noah's got 5 women that is working with him for noon and dinner. He's got 5 hostages. Right? And of those 5 hostages, 4 of the women are very good comrades. They work well together, right? They work really well together. And now that comradeship is not friendship, it's not love. It's a very good indication that love and friendship could exist between those 2 people. Right? So that's the thing about comradeship is having. So, in a sense, I don't know how to do that, but that's what I'm trying to do with that St. Paul's. That's why it's great to be in the community, working together on chapel cover or going on a mission trip or things like that. Because you form comradeship with people of the opposite sex. You do things together, you find that it's a person that you can work with together. And then now you've found somebody that you're probably developing a friendship with, and you can move to sympathy. All right. So, any questions on any of that? We'll just keep going with it. Is it getting too long? Get another 10 minutes in? Yeah. All right. So now we're going to talk about controlled love. All right, controlled. But love develops. So Jack here, first he had, what's the first thing that he developed? Attraction. He was attracted to it. Why was he attracted to it? He's in love with her, as I have to say, he's in love with her big, beautiful, well-formed ears. Two big, beautiful, well-formed ears. And so then what's the next thing that happens to him? He desires her because they're so good. He desires her. He sees her as a good for himself, right? He sees her as good for himself. When you go out with somebody, you didn't see them as good for yourself as well. No, you wouldn't. If you did, I would tell you you're an idiot. So you don't go out with somebody unless you see them as good for yourself, right? So you can be attracted to somebody and realize, oh, this person's not good for me, so it's not going to work. So you desire it, right? So then, because then what happens is, what's the next thing you have for that person? Goodwill, right? Goodwill. All right, and then what he does is, in betrothed love, is, well, it contains friendship then, right? This all manifests itself in friendship. In betrothed love, this is something a little bit deeper, is that Jack gives his eye to Susie. Susie gives his eye to Jack. They hand each other over as this other person's property and possession. Which is just kind of, if you think about it, who would ever do that? Right? A person cannot be someone else's property as the thing. But what is illegitimate in the natural order can come about in the order of love. In the natural order, we are oriented towards self-perfection and aim into ever greater fullness of existence. But this is done completely, says John Paul II, in self-surrender. He who would save his life should lose it. Alright? Just what you're doing then is you're giving yourself to this other person based on the fact that this person is going to receive you in love. And that's what gives you the ability to do that, knowing that they're going to reciprocate back to you. You become each other's property, and you realize that in this, you're going to realize your self-perfection. And giving yourself to God. This is not a sense of self-surrender. Women generally have a sense of self-surrender when they get married. They surrender this, kind of emotional experience that women needs. That's why that a man takes a wife, right? So it's not just this emotional experience of self-surrender. More, it's an act of the will to give yourself to the other person. So that's what control love is. I've given myself to you. That's the other reason that I kind of don't, just on a side note, not a big fan of exclusive dating. Because in exclusive dating, you kind of do this kind of on a little bit. You kind of give yourself to the other person as that person's property in a certain way, and it's unhealthy. That's why exclusive dating has tension in it that really shouldn't be there. You love it because, and you want to, studies have shown, especially for girls that are exclusive dating, they are unhappier than girls that are not. They think they're happy because they have a guy, but they're not. There's a psychological thing that goes on with them. I don't want to get into that because it's not part of this book. So at least right now, even if you're dating exclusively, my advice to you is to date exclusively while giving that person a lot of freedom. Not thinking that they belong to you, that they don't. They don't belong. They belong to themselves. That person cannot belong to you until you have promised that person that you will belong to them totally for the rest of your life. Otherwise, that relationship should exist on a level of friendship. Now, it could be, in a certain sense, an exclusive friendship. I'd be okay with that. You know, this is long, and that's you don't feel like you own each other. What happens when you become engaged? What do you think? You own the other person when you're engaged? No, you don't. The only expectation, the only thing about engagement is now I expect you to marry me. So now I can be more free to open up with you now that I expect us to be married for a week, so however long we need. And now, while I give you great freedom to do what you want, I know, I expect you that you're not going to be flirting with people of the opposite sex. And you promised yourself to me now. So, you know, that kind of obligated. So that's what it gives you. It gives you the freedom and open yourself up to this person completely, knowing that this relationship will be completed in marriage at a later date. Instead of talking about the I, you talk about the me. Right? When you're going out with somebody, you don't say, how many children should we have? Although some people do. But once you're married, or once you're engaged, you can talk in that regard. Where should we live? You know, where should we, you know, things like that. You have that security. All right. So, any questions? I have no questions.
You said something like the worst dates. What, in your opinion, is the best date?
I think the best date is where you and your friends go camping with her and her friends, and a lot of miserable things happen. And you can really see what this other person is like when they're under stress with their friends.
First date?
First date, no. I think a date, I think a dinner is a bad first date just because, you know, there's so much pressure on the whole thing. I think a good date, somebody laughed at me for this at Max the other day. That was stupid. But if you go to the business, you know, you'll find that around campus there's like a lot of cool like little lectures going on, like little talks that people are giving. And I think you go to one of those talks, and then afterwards you go out and have a drink together and talk about the talk. I mean, you can see what that person thinks, and you can, you know, what do you think about this? And, you know, I thought this was kind of cool. What do you think? You know, and you can just kind of learn about that person's thought process. Right? I think that would be a great first date. Depends how well you know the person. You know, ideally you would know the person pretty well by being a comrade with that person, you know, in the same situation, right? Going to working at some soup kitchen or some homeless shelter, doing something like that together. That's great. Anything that you're doing something with each other, you can see what that person's character is like. And where you can have a conversation with each other about things that reveal who that person is. It doesn't take a lot of time with each other to know whether or not you have sympathy or whether you're emotionally attracted to that person. That's usually the easy thing to figure out. Although women should date, I heard, I don't know, cut this off later on, but I read somewhere that women should date a guy at different times in their cycle. Because their hormones have a lot to do with how you find a guy attractive or not. And usually women, because they're more emotionally driven than physically driven, that as a woman gets to know a guy, she finds the guy much more attractive, than just if she doesn't know him very well. So a lot of times you could pass on a guy because that first date you just didn't have any of this going on. You know what I mean? But you don't know, maybe you got to know this guy a little bit better, this would start to happen, right? And so I would say, now if you've been around that guy for a long time, you kind of know what it's like. You know what he's like. But I would say, if a guy, that's why I say if a guy asks you out, first, my big thing too is don't just call somebody up and say, can we hang out? Okay? So if a guy asks you out, the big question you should ask yourself is, what are we doing? Because if you're not doing anything interesting, I don't want to do it. Okay, so come up with something interesting. So going fishing. I used to fish in Rivers Boat. It's in that little bottle.
Oh, nice little thing.
Good. Great America. Any other questions? Yep.
Could you briefly define comradeship again?
So comradeship is when you're with somebody and you're doing something, you're pursuing some good, and you just find that you have a good working relationship with this person. You're a comrade, That's one of the downfalls of the world now is jobs that used to require two people to require one. I always thought a great job would have been in the old days, delivering beer. You did deliver beer to the barrel. What a great job that you and your comrade friend riding in this car and roll in the car. You go kind of haul out the thing, you drink your beer, you roll it around the I always said in front of the four truck driver, a friend of mine, just riding around through the block. All right, great. We'll see you all next week. Next week, just so you know what we're going to talk about, which is I think the most important. This stuff isn't as important what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to have a psychological analysis of love. How love works in your emotions, the sensuality of love, the emotional nature of love. Because this is where people make their biggest mistakes. All right, great. See you all next.